That's new.
That I was just about to say that's new. Okay, so I don't know if everybody else saw that little intro, but yeah, we're recording now. So and we're what, a month late on this.
Yeah.
But we
We're not
just find enough.
Just think of it as not doing it as a conclusion to Falcon and Winter Soldier. Think of it as a precursor to Loki coming out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, but pretty much like when we did WandaVision, right when this was starting.
Yeah, but that was only like
I think we kind of touched.
break.
And I think we kind of touched on the first episode of this already in that video, but obviously we'll refresh that because I do have some differing opinions since I have had time in this month to watch these 6 episodes again. So
this will be the reverse of WandaVision, where I got to rewatch a WandaVision in before we did the WandaVision video.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, even though there's 3 more episodes of WandaVision than there are this, this is still longer than WandaVision when you put like all the episodes together.
And I remember hearing that they wanted this to feel like a movie.
Yeah, like I could like with WandaVision, you could tell it was split up episode by episode because of the sitcom thing. Whereas this, you could literally like somebody could just go in and edit all the episodes together, and it would just flow right through.
Which that's another credit to Marvel. They took 2 shows that came out 2 weeks apart in the same universe that have totally, completely, 100% different feels.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, it's weird how by the time we got to Endgame, how everything felt so in one established universe, and now we're kind of, in a good way, back to that place where you look at one thing like this and another thing like WandaVision. It's like they're on 2 different planets. And in this universe, it literally could be on different planets.
It's kind of like going from watching like a marathon of like nostalgic TV to popping in a spy thriller in the vein of Lethal Weapon.
Yeah. I was hoping for a bit more of a spy kind of feel when people had like the 3 Days of the Condor and Falcon. Obviously, the Falcon and the Snowman is in the title practically. I was hoping it had a little bit more of a feel of that, but
I also heard, and I'm not just name dropping this because I love the cover of your DVD. I also heard a lot of people thought like it had Parallax View vibes.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if it's all of the action maybe that makes it feel a little less like those, but I feel like I think it's particularly the Zemo stuff. They were able to kind of get into that territory pretty well. But it is very action heavy also, which is also kind of what we want also, especially when we have the scene when he decides to give, or when he's flashing back to what Steve told him at the end of Endgame. But really, our first scene of the series is this really big action scene where we see basically what Falcon's doing, like what Falcon's job is now. And
before we dive in, spoilers, obviously.
Yeah, we're probably just gonna say everything. So,
yeah, you've had a month.
Yeah. What's interesting about him being so close to Steve, and how that's basically the whole theme of the entire thing. At the very beginning, right before that action scene, when he has to go after Batroc, he says, they say, do it subtly. And he says, subtle, got it. And then he just jumps out of the plane and we get this really big action scene. Saying subtle, got it, and then jumping out of the plane for a big action scene is such a Tony move.
Yeah.
that was like for him being so close to Steve, that was definitely a bit of a Tony channeling there, I think.
I also like how so much of it centered on Steve, but they never brought Steve in to settle anything. They settled it amongst themselves.
Yeah.
It'd have been so easy to have Chris Evans come in for 5 minutes and film something to put them on track, but they didn't. They had to find their own way. And I love the conversations that it creates, all the hypotheticals. And you never do find out if they ended up going with what Steve would want or not.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's really like, because that's one of the, it's weird how we were talking about when we did our, we just recently did another video on Infinity War and Endgame, and we were talking about how weird it felt after Tony's death.
Mm-hmm.
How it felt like somebody in real life had died or something because it was such a big deal. But yeah, that same thing where it's like you just kind of have to, if you want to honor somebody's wishes who isn't here, it's like you just kind of have to go through life assuming and hoping, and that's pretty much the point of view that we're coming from here.
Mm-hmm. But it's also very jarring, like especially if you've watched Endgame anytime recently. That's a big scene. That's one of the biggest scenes of the movie when Steve gives Sam the shield. And essentially within 10 minutes of the first episode, it's essentially Butthead from the end of Beavis and Butthead Do America going, here you go, and just giving up the shield for the museum.
I was going to say Luke throwing the lightsaber in The Last Jedi, but most people might like your Butthead comparison more. Do you, I didn't think about the idea of him having nephews.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a tad on the nose that there are characters that call him Uncle Sam?
Maybe. I hadn't really thought about it.
You never thought of that? Never crossed your mind?
No, it never did. Hell, I didn't realize till somebody pointed out on Reddit that part of the reason that Bucky probably took so much to Sam's sister is because her name was Sarah, like Steve's mom.
That didn't occur to me. But we've also learned in the past that we may want to tread the line carefully in regards to superheroes' moms' names. That might that might get us turned into memes forever. So
plus, I'll die on this hill too. Bucky was not giving her, oh, that's cute, same name vibes. Bucky was giving off, I will fuck this woman in the alley vibes.
Yeah, because for some reason Bucky runs into everybody in alley.
I love that, like, for this series, like, I love that Sebastian Stan got to do some comedy. Because he's through the whole Infinity War saga, after the first Avenger, he's been such a serious character. Because he's gone through so much shit.
And you talk about what these two shows have in common. That's exactly what we said about Wanda, too.
Mm-hmm. And Sebastian Stan, credit to him, Sebastian Stan acts his ass off in this show.
Yeah, there were a couple of cases where I thought he could have done even more, but the scenes were too short.
I think what also helps too, or hurts too, is Sebastian Stan is acting his ass off and then struts Wyatt Russell, and Wyatt Russell just steals the show right out from under him.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. I love Sebastian Stan in this show. Wyatt Russell's the fucking MVP.
Yeah, because I remember when he came out, and everybody was like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
You were like, "I know who this is."
Yeah, I didn't know who John Walker was, but I knew who Wyatt Russell was, and I told you, I was like, "That's like Kurt Russell's kid, like Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn's kid." And I said, as soon as you see him without the helmet, you're gonna know.
Dude, there's so much Kurt in him, which is good because it's not just looks either. He brought the talent too.
Yeah, in the presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I say again, if anybody hasn't watched Overlord yet, you absolutely need to. It's amazing.
Dude, and for Wyatt Russell, for me, it was one of those performances of, you might not know who I am, but after you watch this, you're gonna want to watch more of my stuff.
Yeah, because if I had to guess, I would say most people, the first thing they'd remember him from is 22 Jump Street, I think. Mm-hmm. But this will probably solidify him as, yeah, we're gonna see a lot more of him. So,
and it's very welcome.
Well, I guess we can get more into how, as far as like seeing more of him, I guess we can get more into how Walker's character was handled.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to go back to Bucky for a couple of things.
Okay.
First off, speaking of things people learn for the first time. Do you remember the first time you saw Sebastian Stan?
No.
Unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure mine was The Covenant.
Oh my God, he is.
He's the villain in The Covenant. You remember now?
I know Susan knew him from Gossip Girl.
And he's one of the creepy
and
guys.
Before we dive into the brilliance of Sebastian Stan and Wyatt Russell, let's both point out Anthony Mackie's no slouch here either.
Yeah, I'm hoping we weren't just going to like overlook him, but we were like headed in so many directions.
I hate that because I feel like that's Anthony Mackie's career in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Goes in, he puts on a great performance and somebody just outshines him. The Hurt Locker comes to mind.
Yeah. And really, the instance in which you met him briefly when he was in We Are Marshall.
Yeah, he's brilliant in that too. Anthony Mackie's a good actor. He's going to start making his way up that list of actors for a while, like Gary Oldman and John Goodman, that are like, well, Gary Oldman not now, but before, where it's like, when are they going to get their due? When are they going to get the appreciation they deserve?
But at the same time, Mackie is huge now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this really solidified him as now that he's got the official title.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be really interesting to see how he gets to carry now what he has, because I'm imagining, like, assuming he'll get some standalone stuff surely eventually.
I think he actually posted that they are moving forward with Captain America 4 with him in the lead.
And now I'm curious, like, how much is Bucky going to be involved in that? Like, is it going to continue to be what it was here, or is he going to get to really be a sole lead?
Yeah, because this is a one-shot thing. I know Loki, I think, is doing a couple seasons, but I think this is just a one-shot deal, right?
That's my understanding. Like, that's what I was saying about WandaVision, was when WandaVision started, I didn't know it was only a miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And I was relieved because I was like, that's good, because it keeps them from going. Because I didn't really get much into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those shows where it was just like it's ended now, hasn't it?
I think.
That's exactly my point. I was gonna say, like, it got to a point where I was like, is that even still on? Like, does anybody still give a fuck?
Mm-hmm. Which is really sad, because like Clark Gregg is great. Like, let's bring Clark Gregg back to the movies, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, imagine if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. happened now, just as a miniseries like this, and what they could have done.
I saw a lot of people, like, on comments and stuff, really wanted Coulson to make an appearance in this show. That he would have fit.
That's just, he's got to come back at some point, doesn't he?
I think Kevin Feige has said, as far as the movie series goes, he's dead. And I think he died again in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I was going to say, I'm not sure his status after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. But I think he could have fit in really well in this show, because if you remember the first Avengers movie, like, how much Captain America meant to him, too.
Yeah,
like, he had the cards.
Yeah, his death was the whole driving force of the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I thought Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was kind of a cop out.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if they did the show to where that kind of like closes up and we're back to square one, then I guess they fixed it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think also I don't mean any disrespect to Clark Gregg over this, but I mean, to me, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they pulled Clark Gregg because they weren't going to get that kind of commitment out of Samuel L. Jackson.
I don't know.
Samuel L. Jackson's got 7 bajillion movies to do a year. He doesn't have time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not that he wouldn't commit; it's that he just literally, it's impossible for him to.
Yeah. Which is fine. I don't think we should be taking Sam Jackson off the silver screen.
No, that's where he belongs. You can't have a personality that big on the small screen for too long.
No, you can't.
Unless he's doing commercials.
Mm-hmm.
But
plus Tarantino always could use the help.
Yeah. I guess while we're on the topic of Mackie, and then we'll kind of branch back out into Bucky and Walker. What do you think about this whole plot of him failing to get a loan, and how all the people that were like involved with the blip are getting like fucked over and everything? I liked how they set it up, which is something I didn't notice the first time around. When right after that first action scene, and he and Torres visit, or like having coffee or whatever, and then when they're getting ready to leave, Torres says, "Don't worry, I've got it," because he knows Sam's like broke.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing, I do think I think I mentioned this when we talked about the first episode in the WandaVision video, but did you notice the first episode has a big exposition problem?
Yeah, it almost makes it hard to get into the show. There's a lot of setup going on. And going back to what you were saying too, like, I like how like Sam wants to go about things the right way and like make his own path. Because let's be real, Sam could have walked into Pepper Potts' office and got a check.
Yeah, probably.
Pepper Potts would have cut him a check.
Yeah, because we get a lot of information about like the boat and their parents and the loan, and none of this is naturally delivered. And it's and yeah, it is like you were saying, where it's like I was pretty much hooked after the first big action scene. But then when you're suddenly getting like, it's one thing like I was talking about, if you want to say that Sam's broke, you can keep doing it in ways like Torres offering to get the check. Because you'll notice that Sam doesn't say, "No, I've got it." He like smiles and says thank you because he needs it. And then when they just start bombarding us, literally like they're reading the script to us before, like they're reading notes about the script before the actual scene took place. Like, here is everything that happened. Like, here's what happened to our parents. This is why we're stuck with this boat, and this is the whole loan thing. And it's and they're like so direct about what's happening. When there's cleaner ways to do that.
It's kind of like in The Dark Knight Rises when you get that first awesome action scene with Bane, and then you're like, oh, I can't wait for him to fight Batman. And then you realize that Bruce Wayne is half crippled, and it's like, oh, we're going to be a minute.
At first I thought you were going to go into Nolan's problem with exposition, which is a whole other can of worms, but and there was even a case, there was something that I praised when we talked about this in the WandaVision video, and the second time around, maybe not so much. I thought it was really well handled how they showed that Bucky was like the person that Bucky killed in his nightmare was Yori's son. And I like the way that they revealed that, to where he eventually went to his apartment, and when he opened the door, there was like that little, memorial section. And it caught me off guard, and I was like, oh, the first time I saw it. Second time I saw it, I realized how much they really lay out that that's what happened before the reveal. There's like so many things that say that's what happened.
I think what helps though is that there's a payoff, but there's not. Like, Bucky tells him, but it's not like the relationship is repaired. It ends with Bucky getting kicked out. That's the last we see of Yuri.
Yeah, I was wondering what was going, because that was one of those cases I was talking about where it's like Sebastian Stan is great in this, but I feel like he'd be even better with more material. And it's like that. I kind of thought that scene would have been a little longer, but it just kind of cut itself off for as big as it was, being like one of the last moments of the show. And something they set up in the first episode. I think
also at the same time that was kind of smart though, because we spent so much time setting it up in the first episode that Bucky wasn't going to say anything that we needed to hear because we'd already heard it.
I guess what I wanted to know was Yori's reaction. Like, did he kick him out, or did Bucky just leave?
I mean, that door closed pretty close to Bucky's face.
But so
you're wanting to know if there's a scene somewhere of Bucky trying to smooth it over, like I just watched The Cable Guy last night, so I'll go with this. Like the scene after the day after the party, and Chip Douglas is trying to smooth over everything where he took his picture with the hooker. You're wondering if there's a scene of Bucky trying to smooth it over like that.
I can see Bucky saying, "Don't let your eggs get cold." right after he tells him he killed him.
He steals Yuri's jacket for effect while he's asking for forgiveness.
Another standout scene for Sebastian Stan is us getting another puzzle piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because another thing that these little sections are doing is giving us these puzzle pieces in the movies that we don't really have yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that we get the scene where Bucky's in Wakanda, and we see him, like, his Manchurian Candidate thing gets basically, not sure exactly what the method was. Mm-hmm. I might have missed that, but showing us how he managed to come out of that.
Yeah, how they kind of deprogrammed him.
Yeah, and it's like, and if they kind of hand-waved that explanation, his performance is what sells the fact that he was back as himself.
Yeah, Sebastian Stan knocks it out of the fucking park in that scene. Knocks it out of the park. Another thing I like about this show that I think is really interesting they did with Bucky was it's very mundane, but to me it's interesting. I love the scene where they're building the boat back and fixing it, and we see Bucky doing everyday things with his hand.
Yeah.
And I love like the little subtle line where he was doing something, and Sam asked him, he was like, "Why don't you use the metal arm?" And he's like, "Arm right-handed. I never think of it."
Yeah. How just disappointing would that be to get like a vibranium arm and it's not the arm you normally use?
Right. Like there's a timeline somewhere where Bucky woke up and he looked at that arm and he's like, "Fuck."
Talking
Lola,
about,
can we switch these?
do you talking about how Bucky gets more comedy now when he was so serious before?
Mm-hmm.
While that's great and it's something we've certainly praised,
mm-hmm.
do you think Marvel also has a tendency to drive jokes into the ground?
They can, yeah.
Did the staring joke eventually get old to you? Because I liked with Zemo. With Zemo, they made fun of his head tilt thing once,
mm-hmm.
and then that was it. And that's all you needed. That's all it needed to be funny. And with Bucky, though, it's like we get the staring joke like fucking 20 times, which may or may not be all in the same episode.
What I love though too, what they're doing with Bucky's comedy, like his lines, he's not like over the top with it. Like it feels very true to his first Avenger character.
Yeah. Yeah, because I do like that. Like it was so because I know what Sebastian Stan looks like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until like 3 episodes in, which is like half of the show, for me to go, "Oh yeah, they cut his hair."
Mm-hmm.
I forgot it. The last time we saw him in Endgame, he still had the long hair.
Mm-hmm.
No, and another thing I didn't notice right away was that he and Sam don't even reunite until episode 2.
Yeah.
And when they do, it's kind of so unceremonious. It's just like, dude, why the fuck did you get the shield away?
Yeah.
I do love that line when they're talking about how their threats are either aliens, androids, or wizards.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam makes a reference to Gandalf, and Bucky gets it. And when he asks, like, "How do you know who Gandalf is?" and he's like, "I read the book in 1937 when it came out."
I love the scene where they're sitting close to each other and they have to like hammer things out with the therapist right there.
Yeah.
Because it's just like it's like two sixth graders that are friends, but they're like in a little spat right now.
Oh, and another thing that I love about the Hobbit joke, I think, is talking about how like sometimes they drive jokes into the ground or whatever. I love the fact that that is exactly Bucky's version of "I understood that" reference. When they make the Wizard of Oz reference that he understands because it was before he was frozen.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's like it's such a completely different delivery to where it feels like a completely different joke. And it shows like how, because like the whole idea of how Spider-Man Far From Home was like about Peter having to be himself, but like he's also kind of becoming Tony, but he needs to stay his own thing. Whereas the same thing here is like both of them, Sam and Bucky, are kind of having this issue of they're carrying on Steve's legacy, but neither, like they're not. It's clear that they're not Steve, and they shouldn't be striving to be Steve. Well, I was gonna say that's more the case in Sam's case, but I don't know. First off, Bucky's known him longer. But I don't know. Yeah, so that's there. I did notice the. I remember for the post-credit scene for which movie was it now? The one that has the last post-credit scene where Bucky's on Wakanda or in Wakanda, whatever you want to say. And there's hints of the whole White Wolf thing, but nobody ever says that. Like it's the same thing where when she gets called Scarlet Witch at the end of WandaVision, and I told you, are we sure we've never heard that before? And it's like, and if I remember correctly, is this not the first time we get him actually like called White Wolf?
Yeah.
Because he drops it nonchalantly, and Sam's confused. And then when the Wakandans actually get here, then he's just called that. So it's like, I like how we're kind of easing into these things. But it's like, because even as somebody that's not versed in the comics at all, I've heard enough to be aware of these things. And then to see them get like actual introductions in this universe. There was one moment, and I wonder if you agree. It's a small thing. The fact that it's set up in Civil War that nobody likes Red Wing. Red Wing is so useful, but because of Sam's arrogance, everybody hates Red Wing. When we're on the truck fight, when they're on top of the two trucks, and I think it's Carly ends up breaking Red Wing. It was kind of upsetting because Bucky's response to that is, I always wanted to do that. Would it not have been funnier if Bucky was legitimately angry that he didn't get to break Red Wing? Like I wanted him to get pissed off and attack Carly for taking that away from him.
Did you know in the comics that Red Wing is an actual Falcon?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Like a live one?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how that works. I mean, I'm sure they make it work, but off the top of my head, I can't think of how that would work.
Because it was the fucking 70s, that's why.
Oh, I guess we can go back to like we kind of branched off into Bucky now. Now we can go into Walker, I guess, a little. There's a lot.
I saw a really good summation of the Walker versus Steve Rogers argument. Is Steve Rogers was what we got when Erskine got to pick who was picked for the super serum experiment. Walker is what we would have got had Colonel Phillips got the final say.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There is something that does seem accurate.
Mm-hmm. Because I saw somebody put it on Reddit, and they put a picture from the first adventure side by side with it, and it was the scene where Erskine and Steve Rogers are sitting there, and Erskine tells him, "Don't be the perfect soldier, just be a great man." And then the picture beside it was John Walker, and it had his stats run down, and it was like the perfect soldier. Like, it was exactly what Erskine didn't want to happen.
Yeah, because being the perfect soldier was basically Walker's goal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was kind of set up that he was that way before he even got the suit and the job.
And I love the fact that Walker doesn't go full heel, but like he just cracks under the pressure. Like, what drives him to where he goes is, I can't be Steve Rogers. And I love that it comes from the fact that he's just like, I got my ass kicked by a bunch of fucking Wakandans. And they don't even have super serum. I got my ass handed to me.
He looks so depressed when he was like, they weren't even super soldiers.
Yeah. And it's like, that is a very realistic thing. Like, you would crack under pressure knowing that you had to follow Steve Rogers. They pulled the shield out of the museum to give it to you. And you don't even have the advantage that Steve had.
What do you where do you stand on this might be a loaded question. Where do you stand on the morals in regards to Walker and Carly and what happens exactly?
As far as what?
I guess in this show's case, that could be anything.
I'll tell you this. One of the best scenes that's happened in Marvel is when fucking John Walker eliminates that guy, and we get that shot of the shield with the blood on the bottom. Oh my God, chef kisses all around for that shot.
I love your choice of the word eliminates.
I mean, that, putting it nicely, but I love that shot. Like, when that shot happened at the end of episode 4, I turned to Susan. I said, "Shit's about to go bananas."
Yeah, so I saw some comments saying like, wherever Steve is, this is like the worst thing imaginable to him, probably.
I also saw where, once again on Reddit, people had put pictures side by side, Steve and Walker with like the shield above their head in that exact pose. And the next picture is Steve used it to disarm Tony. Walker used it to straight up fucking take a guy out.
I saw some people get a little overzealous and think that Walker decapitated him, but you can tell it's a callback to Civil War when he hit him in the chest. But still the brutality is known. The brutality is apparent. Yeah, and I think that's where I wasn't sure, because honestly, the main reason I watched it over again was because I had expectations for the Walker character that weren't quite met, and I think that was a letdown. Because once again, I wasn't aware. I'm not comic versed, so I wasn't exactly aware of the directions Walker was supposed to go. But after that, and really after he pocketed the serum, is when I kind of got the vibe of he's a villain. Which is, I guess, necessarily not the case, it turns out.
And it's just him trying to even the playing field.
Yeah, and then I got it, and then, as soon as when that episode ended with him with the bloody shield, I was under the impression that was like a full-on villain turn.
So I have to ask, since you got to rewatch it and I haven't, is the fight with him and Sam and Bucky at the beginning of episode 5 still fucking awesome?
Yeah, that was the thing was, obviously, since we were watching it a week at a time, we had a week's worth of build up to wonder what was going to happen next after Walker killed that guy in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, and me thinking there's going to be a full villain turn, my thought was, okay, so whatever climax we reach, it's going to be the Flag Smashers and Walker coming from two separate directions. Because I wasn't banking on Batroc coming back, quite honestly. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. Because his fate was kind of unknown after that first scene in the first episode.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I was like, okay, what's this going to build up to? And then the fact that episode 5 starts with that fight. It's sort of like, not to compare these franchises or anything, but it kind of felt like, remember all the hype around Fast 5? We were going to see Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson fight. It kind of felt like that. Yeah, and then after that, we do get more, because the thing that this show does a lot is give us the sympathetic sides to everybody. We've been doing that quite a bit, like when we get Killmonger's backstory and stuff like that. To where it tries to make all the villains like well-rounded, and to where you say like what basically this whole show is about is saying, I get what you're doing, but don't do it that way.
I love the fact that Sam's background as a social worker made that make sense.
Yeah.
Like that, like when Steve met him, that was Sam's fucking job. That's what he did for a living. And I love that's why that scene made sense. Like that would be like, that's not a scene that you could believably see like Tony Stark pull off or, you know, Bruce Banner, but somebody that like that was their means of living before they entered all this. Perfect. And the fact that Walker, being the perfect soldier, just comes in and says, all right, enough, just end this now, and just fucks everything up that Sam had done for the last 20 minutes.
If I remember correctly, is the kind of the first time we get a glimpse of what Walker might be or could be at some point. When he walks in, says he's Captain America, tries to do the whole thing, and then they spit in his face. And he does the "Do you know who I am" thing. I feel like that's when we get the first glimpse of like, oh, the facade's coming down.
Yeah.
But once again, they work so hard also to bring us in from his perspective. Like the first time we really see Walker is that opening scene from the second episode, where we see how nervous he is and does that whole thing when he goes on Good Morning America, which they've brilliantly made look like an actual episode of Good Morning America. And they show like the pressure. So we immediately come in assuming he's like basically a good guy under pressure, and it's not until later that we see what happens when that pressure gets to be too much.
But I think too they do a good job of showing that Walker's not a bad guy. He has good intentions. He just wasn't ready mentally for that spotlight, and it didn't really help that so early in his tenure he tried to make an impression with Bucky and Sam, and they were both like, yeah, none of this.
I love that moment where we completely just shoot down the big moment in the first Avenger when Small Steve jumps on the grenade. And Bucky says, like, you know, have you ever jumped on a grenade? And he's like, yeah, like 4 times. My helmet's built for that. But what's interesting about that, what you say about Walker, is how interesting is it that we can say the same thing about Carly, and can we even say the same thing about Zemo?
I don't know. I love that Zemo, like, I just love that you don't know from scene to scene if you can trust him or not.
Yeah, because I was put off because, as you know, I remember when you told me a long time ago that Zemo was going to come back for this series. And I've been waiting for it ever since. I mean, like, my calendar might as well have dated the first episode's date and said the return of Zemo. But I was concerned that he was made into such a comedy character. But I do like that there is, and I'm still kind of put off by it, but I do like that there's enough of a balance of him being he really knows how to handle his intelligence and what he knows, and to like poke and prod, just sometimes seemingly for the fun of it.
He's a great psychological adversary.
Yeah,
because he can easily get in your head and live in there rent free.
Yeah, and like you can tell they're constantly trying to avoid that. Like they have to be very aware and very conscious when they're around him.
Yeah.
And
like even when he's in when they're in a non-dangerous situation, they know that he could take whatever's going on and twist it the way he needs it to be.
Yeah, how he even gets his own Loki line from the Dark World when they come to Zemo and Zemo says, "So you think it was Hydra, so you came to me." That just shows how desperate you are. That's literally Loki's line. You must be truly desperate to come to me for help. And I do like how they're also able to show Zemo's sociopathy, I guess you could call it, with comedic lines. Like when they kind of blend the two, I'm okay with. Like the moment when he kills Nagel, the guy that's making the serum, and they're talking about how he did that. Like he clearly shot him. And Zemo's response is, "Do we really have to litigate what may or may not have happened?" When everybody saw it. It's like I almost thought they overdid it with right after he says that, Sam says, "What do you mean didn't happen? You shot the guy. We saw it." It's like, I just like the idea of him just saying that may or may not have happened and just leaving it at that. I also like I think it's that same scene where Bucky's kind of getting ready to make fun of Sam because Sam refers to his aunt as his TT. And then just, I believe off screen in the background, we just hear Zemo say, "Your TT would be proud." How amazing is the scene when Sam and Bucky are doing everything in their power to try to find out where that funeral is? And Zemo just kind of walks in with his Turkish delight singing and just gets the information in like 10 seconds.
But then again, like that shows you, like, it's a comedic scene, but at the same time, it shows you like how resourceful and efficient he is.
Yeah. Like even to Walker's bafflement when he's like, "Come on, we have to talk to my associate," or whatever he called her. And it's that little girl just saying "this way." And Walker's at the back of the line going, "What the hell?" Kurt really came out of him in that delivery.
Yeah.
And but yeah, as far as like, are you satisfied with how like with eventually how we got to the point where we established what Zemo's purpose was here, and then when he started kind of going his own way, like when we kind of, because as we saw in Civil War, Zemo's MO is set up the pins and then just sit back and have a drink while they fall and just watch the chaos. And then you get to the point where he actually like destroyed or tries to destroy the serum. And it's like when you get to those points to where it's like he has his purpose and he's definitely has that way of getting in your head, but it's like despite everything he's accomplished, like killing T'Chaka, for instance, there are those cases where he never go well. It's such a gray area because it's like, I mean, yeah, he's gone full villain. He's long since gone full villain, but we know where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that once he's done what he feels he needs to do, he will stop and go back. I mean, he did say to Bucky, like, I decided not to kill you. But I can't quite tell if he meant that's like when Bucky got to Sokovia, or if it was earlier I was going to kill you, but I decided to come here and just get caught instead. But I think that's what makes him such a good villain, is you can't really read him. And it turns out, by the very last scenes of the show, it was still kind of hard to read him in the end.
And it's like the scene where he destroys the serum, like, we've seen how skilled he was because of the scene at the shipping containers. We've seen how skilled he is. And the super serum's right there, and you think, oh man, he's going to take it, and then he's going to be unstoppable. And he just throws you a curveball, and he's like, nah, don't need it. Nobody needs it. He's like, in his mind, he's like, I'll just get you with my brain. Yeah, I can shoot you and look real fancy doing it, but I'm going to live up in your brain first and fuck you up in the head, and then I'll do it. If I think that it's even worth it.
Speaking of the strength of Zemo's head, and speaking of him not getting a chance to destroy all the serum, should we give this man props for surviving taking the shield to the head? How does one live once that's happened?
Because that dude's head is always moving.
It's just like, that's how powerful his mind is. His skull is indestructible.
I mean, it's to the point where even when he gets himself caught and he's walking away with the Wakandans, you're like, he's getting out of this. Like, I don't know how, but he's going to get out of it.
And now that we've said all this, we must give props to Bucky. Do you remember that small moment? I believe it was after the funeral, when Bucky finally snapped and like threw his tea and like got right in his face. And Zemo was like, you can't do that. I'm Zemo. I'm awesome. Nothing phases me. And then imagine if that was the dialogue. And then as soon as Bucky and Sam leave, Zemo like exhales. Like he was intimidated and just wasn't showing it. It's like that might be Bucky's greatest accomplishment ever, was briefly making Zemo almost piss himself.
Daniel Bruhl is good at that kind of character too.
Yeah.
He's good at playing. Zoller was a good point of that. He's good at believing his own hype.
Yeah. And Rush, I didn't realize till now how much that's kind of a trend. But yeah. While we're on the topic, if anybody has
you could run down actor stats, like Robert Downey Jr., expert at snarky deliveries. Jack Nicholson, expert at being creepy. Daniel Bruhl believes his own bullshit every time.
Well, before we go in another direction, I do have to recommend. I think this is something that like kind of really got him on the map before he got like Bastards. But if anybody hasn't seen his movie Goodbye Lenin, you might want to check that out also. It's a different character for sure. But if you're seeking out more of him, that's where I would start if you've already seen like Bastards and Rush and all that.
That's another thing that I like about what these Marvel shows are doing is, yeah, it has characters you recognize, but the people that are coming out better than they went in, you got Wyatt Russell here, Daniel Bruhl, WandaVision, everyone's in love with Catherine Hahn now.
Yeah, I feel like it may be Bad Moms kind of brought that out, and then I think people just kind of forgot Bad Moms existed, so now she's like back for good. She's amazing with drama as well, but it's like, as far as like being just really sort of over the top characters. Is there anything else on? I feel like there's so much Zemo. Is there anything else on Zemo we didn't cover? Because there's somebody else.
The dance.
Which, by the way, got so blown up because everything that comes out and is popular is so meme heavy now. Like, that's everybody's first instinct, is make everything into a meme. I'd forgotten until I watched it again. That frame of him dancing is like 2 seconds long.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like the face of Zemo is that clip. Okay, so let's go back to the Winter Soldier, the movie, which I believe was our introduction. From the Winter Soldier to now, what is you? Okay, let me say this. From the Winter Soldier to the next to last episode of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, what is your opinion of Sharon as a character?
I don't think she really got that interesting until episode 6.
Yeah, because okay, I'm just gonna lay this out there right now, since we're in spoiler territory and everybody knows that. What a letdown of a reveal! like of all the people.
Susan called it in episode 3.
I feel like I should have.
But I think at the same time, it's one of those where it's like, no, that's too obvious.
But I don't know, because every time, because it was a case where she's in the Winter Soldier, and then she was in Civil War, and when she was in Civil War, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about her.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she showed up in this, it was like, oh yeah, I forgot about her. It's like this. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming, knowing Marvel, this was always the plan. She was always.
According to my encyclopedia, the Power Broker is a completely different character. It's like some.
I wonder
dude.
if this was always. Like,
I saw some people commenting after the finale of the show that they also agreed that Sharon Carter being the Power Broker was kind of a letdown, but they were going to be okay with it if it meant we were bringing back Sam Rockwell's Justin Hammer.
Yeah, I've been waiting for that since that short.
Mm-hmm.
The short where Trevor Slattery goes to prison and Justin Hammer's just in there.
Because she's talking about, because she's head of like defense contracts and stuff. That's a very easy way to bring it back in, Justin Hammer. And they do have a show lined up called Armor Wars, and no one's been cast for it or anything. It's just like a concept, but a lot of people are hoping that that's going to be Justin Hammer's way back in.
Yeah, because it's clear they're setting up something big, that she's got all these secrets to sell now.
See, I also saw some theories where people thought that the guy that like decommissioned Wyatt Russell from being Captain America and the one that like awarded Sharon that promotion, had real life not happened, that would have been Gary Shandling's character.
Yeah. It really bums me out he didn't get a chance to do more.
Yeah, we didn't really get we didn't get any more payoff than we got, because Marvel takes their time with so many things that was just one of those instances where they're them taking their time hurt because we lost Gary Shandling before we could pay him off.
Well, it didn't help that his death was totally unexpected.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was never really a fan of Sharon anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's just a lack of things to work with. Like, maybe now that she has stuff to work with, she'll be more interesting. But I don't know. I just kind of feel a little let down.
But Marvel's good at that too. It takes a character that you don't think is going to be very interesting and makes them interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that's never like stepped up yet. I don't know, because there was a case where everybody was saying that they could see it coming when Lamar died.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I didn't really see Lamar's death coming, because I mean, obviously there's the whole scene where they set up that he's basically Walker's conscience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
not to mention the fact that he met his demise by accident.
Yeah. But and that's the thing, was I even though they kind of set it up like Walker has to lose him so Walker can lose his mind, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting him to die because it was like he had a name and everything. I was like, Marvel's always bringing in people to make them something bigger later.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of just assumed Lamar was eventually going to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of surprised that he died.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing too. We were talking about the contrast of like which side is Walker eventually going to fall on. And it's like, so we get him doing something vicious, like killing that dude in public. But then when we see him with Lamar's family, there's always something to balance out, like, the bad that a character does.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing, too, is I feel like had Walker gone full heel in that scene with Lamar's family, we would have seen some of that. We would have seen, like, some sociopathic tendencies, but he seems to be sincere.
Yeah.
Like, he's really hurt that he's gone. Even through all the anger, he's still hurt.
Yeah, because then that prompted my reaction to the mid-credits scene of episode 5 when he's creating his own shield.
Mm-hmm.
And when we saw that, I was like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is that how we're supposed to look at that?
my favorite comment I saw about that on Reddit was somebody was like, man, John Walker about to cosplay his way into the climax.
What was he using? Do we know that?
I don't know. For his shield, you mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people saying that since Marvel has X-Men now, they should say that it's made of adamantium.
Yeah, because I mean, are we assuming he just kind of has access? Well, I guess does he have access to shit through Julia Louis-Dreyfus? Is that what we're meant to believe?
I looked it up, and in the comics, she helps to start like this team of people. I could be wrong. The Marvel people will crucify me if I am. But she has something to do with this team called the Thunderbolts. I think William Hurt's involved too. And it's like John Walker. I think Zemo is a Thunderbolt. Or he has something to do with the Thunderbolts. I keep hearing that's where we're going. I've also heard that Julia Louis-Dreyfus's role is going to become more apparent in She-Hulk. I guess she's supposed to be a big part of She-Hulk.
I heard that. Is she also supposed to be in Black Widow?
Yes.
Yeah, because I know there was that whole thing where we were supposed to have Black Widow before things got shifted. So we would have already known who she was. Like the original idea was for us to already know who she was when she showed up in this.
And it's like we've said for a while, COVID takes something from everybody. Marvel seemed to keep trucking, but COVID kind of fucked up their timeline.
But at the same time, we're jumping timelines anyway, so
yeah, if they're going to get their timeline fucked up, might as well be for a prequel.
Yeah,
because I think Black Widow is supposed to take place between Civil War and Infinity War, I believe.
I really don't know much going into Black Widow at all, so
I just know I'm excited because I'm always excited when David Harbour's involved.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with David Harbour.
Well, there was his Hellboy, but well.
But was that really his fault, though?
No.
I mean, he said yes, but I mean, come on, it was to play Hellboy. He wasn't going to say no.
So, as far as, do you think they did an entirely good job getting you to feel both ways about villain-esque characters like Walker and Carly? I mean, obviously Carly's the antagonist, I guess you could say. But it's like for instance, like you were saying with Lamar's family, we know that Walker is coming from a good place. But at the same time, when he and Bucky are walking away after he quoted Lincoln, and Bucky's like, Lincoln, really? And he's like, hey, man, it's a good quote. And they just walk away. I was like, remember when he killed a guy in public? That was hilarious.
I think with the Flag Smashers, I think with the Flag Smashers it's a little bit different, but I read something that kind of makes sense. Apparently the Flag Smashers plot seems kind of confused because, and I'm not kidding, from what I've read, the original plot involved the Flag Smashers causing a global pandemic.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So COVID happened and Marvel went, well, fuck, we got to rewrite this. Like they're like, we'll get the race stuff in there and the police brutality, but pandemic's probably going too far.
So, where do you did you find yourself I mean, I guess technically we're supposed to flip-flop on Carly throughout, where it's a case of, oh, she's just a kid and she's trying to do the right thing, and then whoa, that was overboard. And then back and forth again, because it was like there's the time when she blows up she blows something up and kills 3 people, and she's like, well, that's the only language I understand, so fuck them. It's like, well, that's dark.
Yeah, she took the logic essentially if they shouldn't have been standing there.
But then there's the thing where it's when she seen, because there becomes a back and forth now, where she accidentally kills Lamar. So he not accidentally kills the other dude. The dude that tragically was a Captain America fan as a kid and died by that shield.
Sweet, delicious irony.
So, of course, she's going to be pissed off about that. So, is she coming from a real place of, I'm long gone, I don't give a fuck anymore? Or is it more of just trying to hurt Walker for killing that dude when we get to the moment when she's talking about something about how she hasn't killed anybody that mattered or whose life mattered, and he says, are you trying to say that Lamar's life didn't matter? And she says, not when it comes to what I'm fighting for. She just wanted to straight up say basically, no, he didn't matter, despite the fact that we know it may have been by accident, but she seemed completely remorseless.
She sees it as just a casualty of what she's trying to do. He got in the way. That's what happens.
Which, yeah. And that also makes me wonder if it was coming from an emotion. Because there is a point also where she, right after she says that, something subdues Walker. And she smiles before she puts her mask on. Like she's really relishing in the chaos. It's like, it's hard to, because there's another thing about the ending, because after a while I feel like Carly's crossed maybe one too many lines in here.
I think that's where the difference comes in, is Carly couldn't stop. Walker crossed the line but was able to be reeled back over.
And then when I was going into the whole thing of, I think there's too many lines that Carly crossed. Like she's reached, if she's remorseless at some point, then she might be at a point of no return. Which doesn't matter anyway, she's dead now, but if you want to talk remorseless. But yeah, talking about what her ideas were, I found it interesting that the show may have put those up even further by accident, maybe. Because I feel like one moment it's like way on the nose. Like one moment that honestly doesn't really work for me is when Sam gets his big speech at the end. Do you remember how a lot of the old South Park episodes ended with either Kyle or Stan saying, you know, I've learned something today, and it plays the music and he goes through the whole message. And it was a parody of stuff that would do that. Sam's speech is basically that, only serious, which doesn't quite. And I think it's one thing that it feels false because of that, but it's another thing of the speech is basically him pleading to senators. And I don't know if we're supposed to feel triumph afterwards, but we've seeing things in real life in regards to what the outcome is when you try to convince a senator of something.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't really go anywhere. Like if the person's in power, they don't care.
Yeah.
You could say that about either thing here.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you think there was a bit of a limpness in this big Sam speech? Because it was like, if this were a real case scenario, this would be for naught. You can give all the big speeches you want. You're not going to move a senator.
I think the difference here is instead of making that speech in a closed Senate chamber, he was making it in the middle of the street with cell phones everywhere.
Yeah. And he finally made his point to Isaiah, at least.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, of all this stuff, it's like, well, even if nothing changes, at least, Isaiah's finally been won over.
What do you think of Isaiah's story?
I do think it's interesting. My immediate first thought, and I hate that this is where my mind goes.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it wasn't. But the first thing my mind went to was, oh, great, we're going to have so many people bitching that this is too woke or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really a pretty, like, it adds up. Like, it makes sense in an unfortunate way.
And what I've found in a lot of these situations is the people that throw a fit about it are the people that are against it anyway. Like if they were going the other way and they were like promoting what the side that was angry thought, they wouldn't be angry anymore. But that's just how people operate. If people are, championing your side, the people that are on the other side are going to hate you. That's just how it works. But I thought it was a very nice scene, and I love that there wasn't a ton of dialogue when Sam took Isaiah to the museum and was like, hey, I got you a statue. Now people know what you did.
There is one thing about, maybe this just would have been a rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And it's like maybe it would have sent us in too much of a different direction when we kind of need to stick to the story.
Mm-hmm.
There was one other thing that crossed my mind in regards to the focus on race.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's only hinted at here that probably could have given Mackie a lot more to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Is the guilt coming back to Sam. Everything that happens after he turns the shield in.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he hadn't turned the shield in, the whole Walker thing wouldn't be happening.
Mm-hmm.
So there's probably a number of lives that would have gone down a different timeline that eventually met their fates because this Walker thing was set into play.
Mm-hmm.
Including Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
Like if Sam hadn't turned in the shield, we wouldn't have the Walker storyline. If we didn't have the Walker storyline, Lamar would probably still be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And Lamar is another black person in that position.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like there's a rabbit hole here we didn't go down?
Mm-hmm. I think it's possible. And for those people that think that that the race is hit on a little too much, I'll just say this. Isaiah was right that, it would be very hard for a black guy to be Captain America. And I think the perfect example of that is look what happened the last time that a black man became the face of the United States.
Then there was, what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, there's a point I didn't even, this is off topic now, but there's something I wrote down that I forgot to mention. Talking about how we have these little callbacks to where they're kind of the thing, but they're also their own thing. During the end fight with Carly, when Sam gets taken down, and then he gets back up, and she says, stay down, and he says no.
Mm-hmm.
is that Sam's I could do this all day?
Yeah, pretty much. And I love that Sam does everything he does without the super serum. Like, he doesn't want that advantage. He's not interested.
Yeah, when you see when you see more than one person with the super serum, like when you see what the Flag Smashers are capable of, it's like when you see somebody that doesn't have super serum, you're like, oh my god, how are they still alive? Like, how are they not?
Yeah, it's sent Walker into a downward spiral, and Sam is just like, well, I got to figure this out. But let me just say, I am excited for future movies because I want to see more of the combination of Sam using the shield and he can fucking fly.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take some helpings of that, please. Because the beginning of episode 6, when Sam is in that fight, when we first see him fighting in the new suit, there's some cool shit that happens. A helicopter ricochets off of Sam. I'm going to repeat that. A helicopter ricochets off of Sam.
And I believe his response was, what was it? You're going to really deserve this ass whooping.
Yeah.
I love how they brought that back also from, I believe he did the same maneuver in the first scene in the first episode when he flies through and takes the pilot out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have never thought before this show how awesome Falcon-centric action scenes would be.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it makes so much sense now. Like, of course, like, especially under this under this Captain America umbrella, where the Captain America movies were when the fight scenes really got amped up.
I mean, if you look at it, the only one-on-one fight that Sam had prior to this was against Ant-Man, and he lost.
He was nice enough to just step in for a cameo, and he got his ass beat.
Mm-hmm. Which, speaking of which, I forgot to mention this earlier, but speaking of Paul Rudd, have you seen the comments where people are saying that Paul Rudd should have been at the Friends reunion, and people responding, he was. What do you think that bug was on Lisa Kudrow?
Oh my god, of course. This whole video has just been me saying, why did I not even notice that? Why did I not even think of that, of course? Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
I'm failing to remember if there's anything else I need.
I mean, we hit a lot. I mean, it's a show that's got definite overarching story threads throughout that are kind of easy to pick up on. Like, some of the little details you can kind of get lost in, but what they're going for, the overarching stories, is pretty easy to follow.
Yeah.
Sam is dealing with becoming his own man. Bucky is trying to get redemption for past sins. John Walker's cracking under the pressure of trying to be perfect. And Zemo is just pissing in everyone's Cheerios.
I was also going to commend how, well, I would say I thought the last episode was a letdown for a few reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was a bit anticlimactic. There's the Sharon reveal.
Mm-hmm.
There's Walker maybe being a little too friendly with Bucky, a little too fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the idea of the entire episode, from its very first second, is a climax. Like, just the whole episode is a climax.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with
I'm gonna do what I typically do. I'm going to justify Bucky and Walker's friendliness to you. I think through the whole show, one of Bucky's arcs is learning not to be alone. And he ultimately sees Walker as an ally, and because of his friendship with Sam, is more open to accepting people in his life.
Okay. I think you're on to something here.
Because that all comes back to the very first scene for Bucky, when he will not open up to his therapist at all. He just completely shuts down. And then when him and Sam are training in that yard of that house with the shield, and Sam comes to him about it, he opens right up.
Yeah.
Like, Sam doesn't even have to pry.
Oh, something else I wanted to praise. And when we actually met up again, pretty much right after this episode, this was the first thing I said.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about Sam becoming Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
How amazing is that training montage?
Yeah.
That is a vigorous training montage. Like, if I needed a training montage to justify somebody becoming the new Captain America, that's the training montage I would expect.
I want to throw another dollop of praise on top while we're doing this. I would say, especially for a TV show, technically, it's probably one of the best shot TV shows I've ever seen. It's shot so it has so many cinematic shots.
As I say, you haven't watched Breaking Bad yet, and you haven't watched Fargo yet.
No.
Those are two that come to mind.
But I feel like the way this is shot, if it was broken down into two movies and put on the silver screen, it would look right at home.
Yeah, because I imagine you're also saying this as I don't know if it's so much. I think this was more when like Whedon had them, but for a while there, the Marvel movies got a lot of criticism for not being really inspired in their cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's since kind of changed a little bit. So, and they're getting more creative in how they show themselves off.
Mm-hmm. I kind of think too, for me, that I feel like that kind of started with the Winter Soldier.
You know, which would have been right around the time we were post Whedon.
Mm-hmm.
It was like we were just about to have Ultron, and then Whedon was done.
Yeah. I can't say enough great things about the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, it really was some kind of like turning point.
It was, and it's so fucking good.
I've seen like a lot of things that people try, like in YouTube videos and other things, are like Bucky's knife moves in the Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And how like almost impossible they are.
Mm-hmm. And then you come to this series, and he's using his hand to essentially, like, he's one scene away from Sarah not being able to open a jar of pickles, and he's just
I don't want to picture a Bucky Sarah themed porn, but you're going to do that. Well, all the Bucky fans have probably thought up significantly more graphic things.
There's also a lot of subtle stuff like that I'd seen, like reading comments and stuff that people had pointed out, like when Bucky falls asleep on Sam's couch and he wakes up the next morning to the sound of the kids playing. Any time in the MCU we've seen Bucky wake up is from a nightmare, and it's a very intense wake up. But when he wakes up there, he's very calm. He wakes up like a normal person. Like, he doesn't panic, he doesn't freak out. He just wakes up, and if I remember right, he kind of smiles. Like, it's a very peaceful wake up.
Yes, I think they still imply in that scene. Oh no, not imply. He straight up says he still has the nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Sam says something like, you still got the nightmares, and his response is like, always, like every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't really put that together. How it's like because it does get this. I do get the sense in that scene he's waking up from something, but it does feel less intense.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since I think the last time we saw him waking up was when he remembered killing Yor's son,
Mm-hmm.
which was probably his most intense wake up.
And I've also seen people throw out the observation that, and maybe it's the haircut, but they say that Bucky just looks, as the series goes on and he becomes more normal, he looks healthier. Like, he doesn't look fucking busted. Like when you first see him in The Winter Soldier, he looks like he hasn't slept in about 70 years.
And then by the time we get to the last scene of the show where he shows up at the cookout, it's like he's just a dude. He just happens to have a vibranium arm, but he's just a dude.
Yeah. He's just a 120-year-old man with a vibranium arm.
His arm even becomes like a play place that the kids hang off of.
I love throughout the MCU too that like whenever we talk about Bucky or Steve's ages, it's always like I think it's the Winter Soldier, Steve's driving down the car talking to Natasha, he's like, well, I'm 95 years old. Like I just love how they just throw that in there.
Yeah, because Bucky's asked how old he is in the first episode, and he says, what, like 105 or 106 or something?
Yeah. So, he looks good for his age.
Yeah.
But, so 2 weeks, we get Loki. I imagine you're taking the same approach with that you take with movies where you're not watching any previews or trailers for it?
I've seen one still. That's it.
What's interesting too is in all the posters, it looks like he's wearing the collar from Days of Future Past.
Wasn't it? Isn't that what he was? Because we talked about how it was. It's directly from the scene in Endgame where it's 2012 Loki.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that something they had him like chained up with or something?
I think so.
So we're getting it from like directly from there.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing since we're getting the Loki series, we're not going to get a Loki appearance in Thor 4, which is fine because as I've pointed out, I am all on board for a movie where Christian Bale plays a character that's referred to as a God Butcher.
Yeah, and I hope we don't get any Loki outside of the show because much as I love the character,
mm-hmm.
I just don't want to do anything else to downplay No Resurrections this time.
Mm-hmm.
We got to stick to it. Come on, you can do it. Say something.
Yeah, but
stick with it.
As the way I described Zemo, is it not Loki's purpose to just piss in the Cheerios of everyone around him?
Like I said, they even have pretty much the same line. Zemo basically is Loki now.
Like, could you not see Loki? Like, he would do it more sophisticatedly, but could you not see like that timeline's Loki seeing this and being like, no resurrection this time? Like I said, Loki would do it classier.
Who do you think is cooler between Loki and Zemo, keeping in mind that one of them is human?
That's a tough call because they both kind of have the same MO. They're just going to live rent-free in your head and let you fuck yourself up.
Yeah, because like I really like Loki as a character,
mm-hmm.
but I've never loved Loki as a character more than in the first Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like he had like these funny moments, but by the time we get to Ragnarok, he's basically a full-on comedy character.
Mm-hmm.
I like the balance of the first Avengers where he's still the black sheep brother,
mm-hmm.
but he felt like a legitimate threat a lot too. But he wasn't above being outsmarted either,
mm-hmm.
or being ragdolled.
Mm-hmm.
Or I love and like I said, some of the comedies over the top in all of these movies for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of my favorite comedy moments in the whole thing isn't even the ragdolling scene. It's the scene when he and Thor are in the woods. And he says, listen here, brother. And then Tony like tackles Thor into another place. And Loki's just standing there by himself going, listening. It's like, that's the shit I live for. And then when he's like in his Roll Silva prison, that whole scene is great. When he's like taunting Black Widow and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
one of the rare outsmartings that you mentioned.
Yeah. So is that it?
I think so.
We spent half of our WandaVision video was doubled its length because we just talked about how excited we are for upcoming projects. So We've done that before.
I'm not sure what comes after Loki. Maybe She-Hulk? Which I know Mark Ruffalo has a part in She-Hulk, so I'm wondering how that's going to go.
So there's cases where I'm not 100% sure what's a movie and what's a series when I hear some of these titles.
Mm-hmm.
So, but either way, I guess we'll see what happens next. So, what's our first movie? Is it Black Widow?
Black Widow, and then the Eternals. Either the Eternals or Shang-Chi.
And then Doctor Strange is after those? I have no idea anymore.
I think after that's Doctor Strange and then Spider-Man.
See, I used to know, and then all the dates kept jumping. Like, Spider-Man was December at one point. Is that still the case?
Spider-Man's been pushed back to 2022.
And Doctor
But I
Strange.
know they're filming because Tom Holland and Jacob Batalon were posting pictures.
And Doctor Strange is 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm excited for those two. Eternals, I don't know anything about, but I'm sure it's going to be good. I think it's going to be like a Guardians of the Galaxy situation where nobody knows who the characters are, but they're going to make it work. They're going to make them must-see characters.
Yeah, a lot of people were afraid that Chloe Zhao would kind of lose her authority and not be able to shoot it the way she wants to, but I think she said in an interview that she got a lot of freedom to shoot it how she wanted, so it's going to look really good.
Shang-Chi, I don't know anything about Shang-Chi either, but once again, I think Marvel will be careful with it and do what they need to do. Doctor Strange 2 is going to be set up really nicely because we had the information that Wanda is supposedly more powerful than him, which is, I'm hoping I know they're not going to stay enemies, but I'm hoping it sets up a pretty badass fight at some point where Doctor Strange tries to have Wanda, pay for what she did in Westview. And then Spider-Man just seems like it's somebody's fucking mushroom trip. All the people they're talking about bringing in, like Melina. I keep hearing Willem Dafoe. So I'm interested to see. I'm kind of wondering if I kind of get the vibe that they're kind of Spider-Man 3 is kind of becoming a live action Into the Spider-Verse.
That's the vibe I was getting.
But my one thing that I would say to Marvel, like as far as like what I want to see, give Vincent D'Onofrio his wish and bring his Kingpin to the big screen. Just do it. He obviously loves the character. He was great. You still haven't watched that season 1 of Daredevil yet to know.
Are you still absolutely psyched that Doctor Strange is being done by Raimi?
I'm interested to see where that goes.
I really hope he brings some of his the wild energy of his early days with it.
Yeah, like give me some Evil Dead mixed in with my Doctor Strange, please.
Even some Drag Me to Hell, really.
I think it'll be interesting. Sam Raimi is super creative, and Doctor Strange is a character in a world that you can take a lot of creativity with. So I'm hoping that they let Sam Raimi just go nuts. And obviously he could be trusted with a Marvel property because the first 2 of his Spider-Man movies are loved. And even 3, even though it's not as good and not as loved, 3 still has its moments.
Which we've talked about in another video before.
And it's interesting too that Sam Raimi can be so balls to the wall, but still do really nice scenes, like the scene with Flint Marko and his daughter. That's a really nice scene.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what happens. I think we're getting a lot of really good stuff set up with these TV shows, and it's going to lead to a really good direction.
And all the people that go on about how they're tired of superhero stuff are going to be some pretty miserable people for a long time.
Yeah. Well, until the content stops being good, it's going to keep coming.
And so either they're going to be miserable for a long time or they'll get over
Mm-hmm. And Doctor Strange is full of multiple universes. Expect some of these characters to be rebooted. There's going to be an Ironheart TV series where there's a girl that's going to take over for Iron Man. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think I kind of wonder if Downey's going to somehow come back into the fold since Doolittle crashed and burned.
Much like the Loki thing, I hope not.
The only thing that I know that he's signed up for right now for Marvel is the What If series. Yeah. Which I'm interested in that too, because that'll just be kind of a neat way to see different stories be told that aren't necessarily canon, but are like fun situations.
Yeah. But I do want to make it clear. I do agree that doesn't count, so I have nothing against that idea.
Mm-hmm.
But as somebody whose favorite character in the Marvel universe, the movie universe, is Tony Stark,
mm-hmm.
I really hope they don't find a way to bring him back.
But I'm also interested to see, too, not only do you have Doctor Strange with his multiverse, but Loki's going to cause some shit. Loki's going to rip up the time fabric of something. And then let's not forget Guardians 3 is around the corner, too. And then next year they're having their holiday special, which James Gunn has come out and said you're going to need to watch it. It's canon. Like, how many times has there been a holiday special made where the director's like, you need to see this to be able to move forward in the story?
Is that, have we reached the end?
I think so, finally.
All right. I don't know. I've got a couple of reviews. I don't know when they're going to go out in correlation with this, but there should be 3 videos that just kind of materialize kind of all at once.
Mm-hmm.
All goes to plan. Like Cruella and Army of the Dead will be in there somewhere, and Spiral. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that might be it until we do whatever our next thing is.
Which will probably be when you're up here. Usually when we're in the same place, we usually try to put together a bigger video. So I'm sure that's probably the route that we'll take. I don't know.
There's also one that we're already prepped for that we never did. I'm going to have to try to squeeze that one out too.
You have to remind me what that is.
The trilogy we were going to do.
Which ones?
I guess I can just tell you. I don't know why I'm being cryptic.
Mm-hmm.
Owen got me into that habit for some reason. The Austin Powers trilogy.
Oh.
I've got like a whole page of notes on the Austin Powers trilogy I never used because we got sidetracked. So until whatever the next thing is, I think that's it.
I think so.
All right.